Sometimes you find show content in the weirdest places, like on Facebook at 2 a.m. while you're feeding a 2-week-old. That's how it goes sometimes. I mean, they say that in radio, your life is one big prep, and that is in large part true. And certainly for us, when you're actually, the content, it's not Bon Jovi or Madonna, it's a little more work. That's just how it goes. Sorry, music guys, I love you, but I'm just saying, this is the big leagues here. So at 2 a.m., I guess it was Saturday morning, I'm doing the feeding, and then I've got Charlotte kind of resting on me and, trying to figure out how I'm going to get her back in the crib and when that's going to happen and if she's going to fall asleep, if she's going to wake up. The song and the dance and how it goes. And by the way, and I remember doing this with each of the girls, but I am trying to cherish it even more knowing that this is the last one of these and that, in 3 months, I won't be doing this. So I do try to think that way. But sometimes, your mind starts wandering and getting distracted and you do the bottle and then you can't sleep and she's sleeping on you, but you're like, I can't pick her up yet. So I pull up my phone and I just happen to pop on, I guess it was Facebook. It might have been Twitter where I saw this ad. Probably was Twitter. And it's an RFK Jr. ad. Of course, RFK is running for president. He wants to get on all 50 state ballots. He's doing this as an independent. And to his credit, this ad that I saw is him talking about an issue that is right now, if you were to talk to most people under the age of 35, maybe under the age of 40, and you were to ask them kind of specifically what their biggest issue is right now, they would say the cost of housing. They would say their inability to buy a home in this environment. RFK Jr. has this new ad as he's running for president talking about that very issue, which, by the way, Donald Trump has talked about a little bit. He's talked more about the economy at large. Joe Biden has barely talked about. He's got this awful idea around tax credits. But RFK hits home on one of the biggest issues that young voters in America care about today. Here it is.
Richmond, north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control.
The real culprits of this, which is BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, that now own 88% of the S&P 500. And if they stay on the current trajectory, they will own 60% of the single-family homes by 2030. And these Republicans who are debating, they're like 40 years behind. None of them talked about what's happening to Americans who just can't pay their bills anymore. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I approve this message.
Now, that ad from RFK, he targets Republicans. Now, obviously, he's got to target both sides. He's running as an independent. I don't really care about that part of it. The part of it, because he's got to do that. The part of it that matters is when he's talking about single-family home ownership. The bedrock of America, in so many ways, was getting to the point in this country where you owned your home, right? It's been the American dream, the backbone of the American dream for generations now. Well, you ask any young person, or any person for that matter, who's in the market to buy a home, and it's been very tough for the last few years, but obviously the last couple of years, in the wake of these sky-high interest rates and housing prices that are not slowing down one bit, it has been even more difficult. The costs are astronomical when you factor in the cost of the house itself, when you factor in the interest rates, when you talk about how insurance keeps going up, when you talk about property taxes continuing to skyrocket. I mean, you're talking about a monthly nut on your payment that's easily going to be double what it was just a couple of years ago. And part of that problem as well is now you're not just competing against other buyers in a market that is short on supply and high on demand. You're competing against institutional buyers. You're competing against the BlackRocks of the world who suddenly decided at some point in the last couple of years, let's start gobbling up single-family homes. Let's start owning single-family homes. We'll rent them out, and, that'll be now a backbone of our business. And if you're Donald Trump, who clearly has the edge economically when it comes to basically every issue over Joe Biden, but if you're just anyone in politics who wants to connect with younger voters, I know they all think all younger voters care about is like climate change and abortion till 40 weeks, but actually something that's much more relatable and is also far more bipartisan is this issue. It's the housing crunch and the housing crisis. And, Joe Biden in his State of the Union kind of addressed this a couple of weeks ago, but his idea on what to do for the housing crunch was probably the worst idea you could come up with. His idea was a tax credit for homeowners. Instead of saying, you know what we need to do? We got to figure out how to unleash the economy. We have to get home builders to actually build single-family homes. If that includes some incentives, fine. And then we have to figure out how to get the BlackRocks and the institutional buyers out of the housing market. And that is the first thing. Joe Biden's not going to go out there and promote free market principles to really help the housing market explode and the home builders do their thing. He's not going to do that. But what he could do, and what Republicans should join him on doing, is basically making it so that the institutional buyer is not buying single-family homes. I know there's going to be some libertarian think tank wonks out there who are going to tell me how, no, the government can't get involved and we've got to let the free market do its thing, and I'm a free market guy. But you tell me how you get these clowns out of the single-family homeownership market and stop them from outbidding with cash a young family trying to start their lives. You tell me what you do. Yeah, and I know in this perfect world, it's just about increasing supply. I get it. But you know what? We don't live in a perfect world. That is very evident. And the fact that BlackRock can beat out Steve and Sally with a newborn baby trying to buy a home in Overland Park or Liberty or Lee Summit or Olathe, the fact that they can do that today, and they will do that today, and they are going to do that today, and that millions of Americans are going to be left out of the American dream, and you'll own nothing and be happy, the fact that that is now even a conversation we have to have is a case in point for the issues that we're facing, and why if the federal government can do anything when it comes to helping people in, looking for their first home or looking for any home for that matter, this is certainly at least one way to do it. 913-408-7957. And then, yes, local municipalities and counties also have a role here to stop incentivizing developers to build condos, which is all these clowns want to build. But that's a story for another day. Scott's in Kansas City. Hey, Scott, good morning.
Morning, Pete. Congratulations on the new baby.
Thank you, brother.
Kansas City, Missouri just accepted the 2021 code book, which is like the Green New Deal on steroids. We were talking with my engineer and architect about a new construction project, and they said, bottom line, at 20% cost to every dollar you're putting into a new home. So if I got a starter home that prices out at $400,000, it's going to be $480,000. So I've just priced out a lot of those young buyers who did have a budget, and with the interest rates now can't afford it.
Are you a home builder, Scott?
Remodeler and home builder both.
Okay, so you spend time in that world. You know it very well.
I was the one who called the mayor out at your last Politics and Pint.
Oh, okay, that was you.
Yeah, and the city planners, this is the first city to accept the 21 code book. A lot of the municipalities are waiting. They're still holding on to the 2018 just because of all these energy regulations. But, Pete, you got condos going up and people keep complaining, why aren't you building more new homes? It's getting tougher. If you're a custom builder and you're building a custom home for somebody who has, $500,000, $750,000 or $1 million, we can make that work. But if you want us to go and spec out new homes for a starter buyer, young kid, first time, we're pricing them out of the market right now.
So Kansas City, you're looking at about 500.
Yeah.
Anything better in the suburbs anywhere where there's maybe less regulation?
Yeah, but it's it's going to be changing soon.
Yeah.
If people want to show up and tell their city council and the mayor of every one of the municipalities, hey, what are you going to do not to regulate this, that would be to their best interest.
Mm-hmm.
But
Wow.
the federal government is pushing this.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of incentives the Biden administration did for the city of Kansas City to accept this, but I know they're pushing it.
Wow. So now up about $50,000 on a new build in Kansas City because of these regulations that they adopted.
Yeah. Ask the mayor. I mean, he and the city council appoint the planning commission. They're the ones who accept it. So, and then they can blame. Well, it's not us. But,
So
what
is it? What is it? The 2021
code book.
Code book.
The International Building Code book. So they come in 3-year increments. A lot of the cities are using the 2018. I think there's one municipality that's still on 2015 or 2012. But they have the choice to what they're going to follow as far as building regulations and the codes for the builders.
Mm-hmm.
But the 2021, I mean, it's just jam-packed with every Green New Deal energy regulation that you could ever dream of in there.
Wow.
I mean, it's like a World Economic Forum dream when it comes to building.
Scott, thank you.
And we have to adhere to this.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Thank you for calling in. I appreciate it.
Have a great day, man. Bye.
913-408-7957. 913-408-7957. That's a great call from Scott. I remember him when he called out Quentin Lucas at our Politics in a Pint last summer. There is something that happened in the housing market over the weekend with realtors that people think will end up saving money for home buyers. I'm not convinced of that yet. I'll share with you what happened. You might have seen the headlines on the commission rates potentially coming down for realtors. We'll get to it next on KCMO. I mean, if you're in your home right now, life's pretty good. If you got an interest rate from pre-2021, things are going pretty well. But if you're in the market right now, young buyers trying to get out there and live their best lives and live the American dream, you're screwed. It is tough sledding right now. So when I bumped into this RFK ad on Twitter over the weekend at 2 a.m. after feeding Charlotte, I'm like, RFK's on to something here. At least he's talking. Not that I agree with his answers probably to the issues necessarily, but on this one in particular, RFK Jr., who's running for president as an independent, railed against the BlackRocks of the world for competing in the single-family housing market. And he said here, and I don't know if this is an exaggeration or not, but his ad says that if we keep on our current trajectory, over 60% of single-family homes in this country will be owned by institutional buyers by 2030. If you don't see a problem with that, if you don't see that being, by the way, the World Economic Forum's wet dream of you will own nothing and be happy, then I don't know what to tell you. JK is in Leawood. Hello, JK. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Hey, I'm a licensed realtor in Kansas, Missouri, and I just tuned in about 10 minutes ago, so if this has already been addressed, I apologize if I'm repeating what someone else has brought this up. But my subdivision I live in Leawood, we passed about 6 months ago. We're managed by Century Management, which has a lot of HOAs, and we can no longer sell to any LLC, corporations, and or rent. Anyone that's living in the subdivision is grandfathered, but from future on, we cannot sell to any corporations.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. And I know that's happening at a lot of HOAs, JK. I know ours is trying to do something similar. However, I mean, most homes in the country are not under an HOA, which leaves them vulnerable unless the cities do something about it. And you and I both know the cities aren't going to do a darn thing.
No, they're not. And what they should do, a lot of countries, you can't buy a home unless you're a citizen. I mean, we're letting corporations that don't even live in this country buy our homes. It's crazy. Yeah.
And even if they do, I mean, they are still institutional buyers. And the whole purpose of a single family home is not for BlackRock to gobble up 30, 40, 50, 60% of them.
Well, what they're doing in Colorado, I had a place there and sold it. What they're trying to propose now in Colorado, because it's so hard, is a lot of these places in Colorado are paying personal property tax. Well, now if you rent your place out more than 90 days, it goes to commercial, which is like 4 times the amount of their personal, of the tax they're currently paying. And they're also charging a vacancy. So if you're not living in it or a resident, they're going to charge you a vacancy. So they're trying to get rid of them in Colorado as well, because they have a huge problem in the resort areas for employees to find a place to live, or the rents are so exorbitant they can't afford to work and live there.
I have heard of that happening in Colorado. So basically, if you're a BlackRock and you buy the home and then you want to turn around and turn it into a rental, you will get taxed on that like a commercial property, not a residential property.
Correct. Right now, it's currently just a residential.
Yeah.
But now they want to tax it for commercial, which is 4 times the amount. I mean, it's a huge. Here's why that's such a shifty move by a state government to do, because it's kind of like they're pretending like they're doing something, but in the end, they'll just get more money into their coffers, and then it might slow down the institutional buying a little bit, but how much remains to be seen. But in the meantime, they're going to get a boatload more money into the state coffers for that deal. Oh, yeah. And it really hurts the little guy, too, that does have a place and is Airbnb in it when they're not there. So it affects the individual as well as the corporation. So.
Excellent point. JK, thank you so much for that. There's a lot of HOAs trying to fight this on their own. And while I don't want to see the government ever more involved, most homes in this country are not protected by HOAs, especially on the lower end, right? Especially when you're talking about starter homes, which are typically people's first venture into home ownership. So I don't want the government more involved typically, but I don't know what else you do. But I would sign up today for a federal ban on institutional buyers of single-family homes. I'd be all on board with that. And I think it could actually be pretty bipartisan. I did want to mention this. It ties into our conversation about the real estate market. The 6% commission that if you bought or sold a home that has been the standard for so long is no more. This came down on Friday. The National Association of Realtors announced a settlement with groups of home sellers, and they agreed to end landmark antitrust lawsuits by paying $418 million in damages and eliminating rules on commissions. The National Association of Realtors, which represents more than 1 million realtors, also agreed to put in place a set of new rules. One prohibits agents' compensation from being included on listing places, such as the multiple listing services, which critics say led brokers to push more expensive properties on customers. Another ends requirements that brokers subscribe to multiple listing services, where homes are given a wide viewing in a local market. And another new rule will require buyers' brokers to enter into written agreements with their buyers. So there's this belief that this is going to tank real estate commissions and also will help out the housing market. I don't see how that happens at all. I don't see how the housing market gets a lift because the realtors are maybe not going to get as much money as they traditionally did. And I'm okay with this, by the way. I mean, it was kind of like the mob. The National Association of Realtors was kind of just holding the entire industry hostage with this 6% number. But I don't see it having a great benefit for buyers at all. It just means sellers are probably going to get to keep more money, but I don't see buyers being benefited all that much. In fact, there's speculation now that buyers who typically, of course, they don't have to pay anything, right? If you're buying a home, your realtor gets paid by the seller. The seller typically will give 6%. That 6% is then split between the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. There's some belief now that buyers are going to have to pay out of pocket some kind of a fee or a commission to their realtors. And then the seller is only going to have to pay 3% out of their sale, or whatever the number they agree to is, 2%, 1.5%, 2.5%, whatever, to their realtor. So that's something that is worth watching. I don't think it's this big boom for the real estate market. I don't think it's going to help all that much. But I do think it's the fair thing to do. I mean, I think these numbers should be negotiable. And frankly, as home prices keep skyrocketing, keeping that number at 3% for what? I mean, and this is no disrespect to anybody who does this for a living right now. But you go back the last few years, I know, because I've had good realtors, I know what a good realtor can do for you, and I certainly think they provide value. But as home prices have gone up 10, 20, 30, 40% the last few years, do I think that their value has gone up with the increase in homes? No. So I do think that percentage should come down. I think it's ridiculous that, especially when you're talking about the selling side. I mean, that is just shooting fish in a barrel. You got to really screw up to not sell a home effectively today in this market. And that's true over the last bunch of years. The buyer side, that's a bit more work. You're going from home to home. They like this. They don't like that. You're dragging yourself around. That's tough. The selling side, let's be honest, that's been pretty easy lately.